such an amazing thing. And God's word tells us that if we are going to be able to walk each other home and to walk the lost world out there home, we have to smell right. 2 Corinthians 2 verse 15. Everywhere we go, people breathe in the exquisite fragrance because of Christ. We give off a sweet scent, rising to God, which is recognized by those on the way to salvation. It's full of life. But those on the way to destruction treat us like the stench from a rotting corpse. Have you had people pull up their noses at you before because of Christ? Yes, a lot of us have. Have you had people come to you the way a bee comes to a flower and they don't yet know why? They just want to come. It's the smell. That smell has so many names. Grace is one of them. If we sound like law, it stinks. If we smell like law, it stinks. If we smell like grace, it brings people. I never actually had the experience of smelling the difference until I climbed Kilimanjaro with the Freedom Climb. And I won't tell you the whole story, but when you're finally on that crater rim, on your right-hand side, there's this major hole. I mean, that thing is a dormant volcano. It has a big crater. And the sulfur gas rises from that hole, and it stinks. It's a smell of hell on your right-hand side. And you are walking on a fairly treacherous, icy little rim, fully aware of the fact that if you give 2 steps to the right, you may very well end up in hell, figuratively speaking, but down this hole you go. And on the other side, there's this wide open space with a massive light blue, pure glacier standing there. And as I was walking on that rim, I realized that the walk home can either be on that very scary little slippery slope where we tell each other, you're going to fall, be careful. Are you 100% sure you're absolutely in the middle of the right road? And it becomes such an unpleasant, scary and exhausting journey home. Or we can tell each other every now and then, yes, I smell it too, but let's look to the left. And if you go close enough to that glacier to look at your reflection in it, the only thing it reflects back at you is the part of you that's already the color of heaven. Because that is what grace does. Grace shows you only the part of you that already looks like Jesus. Can you imagine? We are walking next to one another, walking home, constantly reminding each other of that bit of Christ we already see in one another. What a journey that would be, as opposed to the one we are constantly warning and threatening and amplifying the smell from the crater. Walking each other home is one where we desperately need to be a smell of life, to encourage. When I was on that crater rim, I had to make one of the hardest decisions of my life because I wanted to walk home, which in this particular case was Uhuru, the summit of Kilimanjaro. That means freedom in Swahili. I wanted to go there with my backpack on my back, strong and powerful. I wanted to arrive victoriously at that place. But there is this thing about going home in a Christian sense, and that is you do not arrive with your pride intact. If you still have your pride, you have not arrived. You cannot get there. And on that crater rim, there was this moment when I had to wave a white flag and say to my guide, Ramadhani, I cannot carry my bag. And he was already carrying one here, and one on his back, of other climbers who also couldn't cope, but who probably had less pride and tanked earlier. And he just grabbed that bag and he swung it over the open shoulder and he said, thanks, ma'am, it's a light one. And I started crying and never stopped again, because he walked me home carrying my entire burden. And I was walking like this, because those of you who have done Kili will know you walk like this. And crying in between. I won't try and imitate that as well. It's already offensive enough. Let's just summarize and say my walk home did not sound really good, but next to me was Ramadhani singing about Uhuru all the way home. If we are going to walk each other home, we have to smell of life, because it gives hope. My favorite home smell is fresh baked bread. I don't do too well on bread, but I still like to smell it. Because when you smell it, there is the hope that there will be food. I don't know of any mother who will bake the bread and then go, no, there's nothing to eat. Or rusks or something and give it all to the neighbors. No, that would just be really rude. Because the smell creates hope. The knowing that there will be everything we need. For me, when I think of Mother's Day and I think of my grandmother, and I think of so many smells that I love. Just for a second, remember the smells of home. It is so deeply emotional. It is so important that when Jesus said, I want you to remember me, he gave us bread. But I love that he breaks it once everybody's together, because bread that has already been cut and put in little blocks on a tray, it doesn't smell of anything. But the moment you open that lovely bread, you smell it. And he gave us wine. It's impossible to drink wine and not smell it. In fact, it's rude to not smell it first and appreciate what the beautiful people in the Cape did to that grape before it went in the bottle. And then you have to drink it. Jesus did that on purpose. He did it on purpose because he wanted us to smell him. He wanted us to smell home every time we eat bread, every time we drink wine. He wanted us to have hope. It is important. Children also find home by feeling. I loved seeing that little one feel his mom's middle. No, I don't know what the conclusion was. Too skinny, too fat, I have no idea, but it's interesting how he knows exactly. He just touches those hips and he goes, it's not them. But the feeling of the familiar, sometimes people and places just feel right. It can be halfway around the globe and you can't put your finger on it. It just feels right. This little box that my son crawled into felt like home to him, and he wouldn't come out. It's obviously because he has some sensory integration problems and he likes a small space. When we moved into a house with a big room, he put the one mattress like this and the other one like that, and then the cupboards were like that so that he had a small enough space to feel safe. We're all forever creating a safe space around ourselves. But home is more than the space. And a real home has a very, very special feeling. It's a power to call you. And those of you who have traveled a lot will know that when you're away from home long enough, it's all you can think of. You just want to walk through that front door. Is this home calling the homeless, the orphans, the spiritual fatherless? If it is not, we have to figure out why it isn't calling people home. Because a home calls out. And the other thing is, a home comes to get you. I want to read it to you from Luke 15, verse 20. The prodigal son was smelling hog food, pig food. He was in a bad place. And he remembered home. It called him because of who was there, because of the heart of his father. And it says, when he was still a long way off, his father saw him, because home waits for you. It's watching out for you. If we are always here just looking up to God and looking at each other and never keeping an eye on the horizon, looking for the lost, we don't have the heart of home. This father saw him. And then look at what this home does. Because the home is not that building. The home is this father. He gets up and he runs towards the one who is lost. And he embraces him and he kisses him. There is something so amazing about taking home to people. I didn't understand this for a really long time, because for me, home was that place where I could see a lot of other people were. I don't know if you have ever felt like the outsider Christian, the not yet arrived. I felt that for so many years. I can't even remember how many years. And one day at a youth camp, I went to the counselor and I said to her, can I describe Christianity to you? To me, it is a house standing in the middle of a forest. And I am somewhere in the forest, and between the trees, I can see to this little house. And there's a warmth and a light in there. And there are people in there, and they are with Jesus, and I can see them all through the window. But I can't get there. I just can't get in. I can see it's the place to be. I can feel it's the place to be. But I just can't figure out how to not be the orphan. I can't get home. And at the same time, I'm not too sure if I'm allowed to go home. I'm not sure if the door would open if I knocked. But I desperately want to go in. And I asked her this question. I said, tell me how to get there. And she said, no, it's not the way it works. Stand where you are now in the woods. Close your eyes. And wait. And I closed my eyes. And in my mind's eye, I saw Jesus. And he opened that door. And he came through the wood on that secret path I just couldn't find. And he walked right up to me, lantern in his hand, found me in the dark, and picked me up and took me home. In the end, it is only he who makes the orphan a son and daughter, just as we sang today. He's the one who comes to your woods to come and get you and to bring you home. On that same climb, after summiting, there wasn't anything left of me, especially my knees were just absolutely finished. And my guide looked at me and he said to me, you don't have it in you to go down this mountain the normal way. It's not going to work because you have been in this low oxygen space for too long. You are not going to make it if we let you do that. You have to hook in with me, close your eyes, and I'm going to run you down this mountain. I wasn't very sure how that would work. And he said, you just lift your knees a little bit like this. And sometimes, in order for us to get home, that needs to happen. Sometimes we don't have it in us. We just don't. And we have to trust enough to lean on somebody to run us down our mountain if we don't have it in us. And I remember sometimes falling and rolling, and I would lie on Ramadhani, or Ramadhani would lie on me, and I wouldn't even care because it was just so good to lie down for a little bit. That is how you walk people home. You do it at the tempo they can handle. It's called grace. That is what it feels like. It allows you to lie in the gravel a little bit, and then it tells you, come on, you can get up, let's go. And then it picks you up, and then you go again. And after many hours of this, I started what I thought was probably hallucinating. And they warn you against this when you climb these mountains. They tell you, if you see pink little piggies running around or little girls playing with balls in little frilly dresses, they're probably not there. So keep it to yourself. Because if you share this wonderful vision you're having, they're going to send you off the mountain on the mountain ambulance, which is not fun. The mountain ambulance is not fun. So I saw this, and normally when you have a bit of an hallucination, it kind of floats a bit and it becomes clearer and unclearer. But this thing was becoming clearer and clearer until the point where I said to Ramadhani, do you see the boy? And he said, yes, I do. But we had ice rain coming from the front in our faces. And this boy was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. And he was running with a jug of Oros and a cup, coming up the mountain. And at that point, just something coming up the mountain didn't make any sense to me, because the only thing I could think of is that tent where they make the tea that I could see in the distance. I was going for home. And in that entire last stretch, nobody ever said, come on, hurry up, it's getting late. You're taking too long. Because they were walking me home in grace. And this boy has the job of meeting what I call the LSDs, the lamsiek and dooies, the ones who are clearly not on their own legs going to make it. And he runs up and down that mountain with Oros for the ones who are really not shaping. That's that beautiful thing about love. It doesn't overtake us. It doesn't run past us and scream, hey, are you coming? It comes towards us from home, and it brings us that hope. That is what home feels like. And I was just wondering if we could have a little bit more patience with one another on this journey home. If we could sometimes run with Oros. No judgment, no criticism, no wise scripture, just Oros. And just the fact that somebody comes from that direction gives me the hope that I can get there too. That's maybe all I need at that particular point.